Eugene stared at his perfectly organized and gleaming handiwork with tired pride. The Adosian spaceship was spotless, every tool and supply precisely labeled and stowed, each surface scrubbed surgically clean by the desperate human janitor. But the ship's alien crew would come to bitterly regret hiring this human neat freak, as a looming crisis would soon prove their new janitor had tidied the vessel to the brink of destruction. Chronically unable to hold a job on Earth, Eugene had glumly taken a posting as janitor aboard the Adosian ship in a last-ditch effort to make ends meet. Commander Talon had begrudgingly offered the gig, clearly viewing humans as inferior. But he needed someone to tidy the massive vessel, perpetually cluttered by his brilliant but disorganized crew. Eugene started in the cargo hold, confronted by an overwhelming jumble. Crates stacked perilously, items strewn about, not an inch of decking visible. He dove in with gusto, and within days had converted the chaos into a masterpiece of meticulous order. His impressed Adosian supervisor spread word of the humans' good work. Next up was the nightmarish engine room, caked in grime, knee-deep in greasy rags, tools, and parts. Eugene spent a solid week scouring, sifting, labeling, and stowing. To the engineers' amazement, they could actually find things again in seconds rather than hours. With each new assignment, from mess deck to crew quarters to shuttle bay, Eugene attacked the entropy with diligent vigor, and slowly, the ship began humming with newfound efficiency. Even Commander Talon had to, very reluctantly, admit the human was proving highly useful. But as Eugene's reign of cleanliness expanded, ominous rumblings of discontent spread among the Adosians, far more comfortable with casual clutter. And when the crew began to routinely fail at locating even basic equipment in the overorganized ship, an increasingly flustered Commander Talon finally confronted the janitor, demanding he restore some of the familiar mess. Eugene flatly refused. He had poured his heart and soul into whipping this ship into shape, and he wasn't about to let his hard work be undone. Simmering tensions came to a slow boil between the compulsively clean human and the chaotic aliens. But there was no denying Eugene's efforts had given the ship a new edge. Able to complete maintenance, cargo loading, and route plotting in record time, they began taking on riskier missions no one else would attempt, like an urgent run to ferry vital meds through an asteroid field to a plague-ridden colony. With Eugene's immaculate vessel, they adroitly navigated the treacherous minefield of space rocks. But a stray asteroid pummeled their shields and sensors, leaving the ship crippled and directionless in the black void. Commander Talon frantically called for the emergency beacon to be activated to summon help before backup life support failed. But in Eugene's spotless, sanitized bridge, not a soul could find the physical copy of the beacon launch codes. As the air grew thin, a desperate Talon pleaded with the prideful human janitor to locate the codes with his encyclopedic knowledge of the ship's organization. The lives of the entire crew now depended on the human whose assiduous tidying had pushed the ship to the very edge of doom. Would Eugene's talents end up being their salvation or the instrument of their demise? Eugene sprints through the darkened corridors of the ship, his heart pounding as the gravity of the situation weighs on him. The emergency beacon codes, the key to their survival, are missing, and he's the only one who can find them. He starts with the bridge storage lockers, tearing through them with frantic precision. Empty. The emergency equipment caches. Nothing. His mind races, trying to recall every nook and cranny he's cleaned over the past weeks. The ship shudders, backup life support sputtering. Eugene can hear the Adosians' panicked shouts echoing through the halls. Commander Talon's voice crackles over the intercom. "Eugene, have you found them yet?" "Not yet, Commander, but I will," Eugene replies, his voice steady despite the chaos. He moves to the crew quarters, questioning anyone he encounters. "Think, where did you last see the codes?" Most of the Adosians avert their eyes, too proud to admit their carelessness. But a few offer hesitant suggestions. "Try the galley. I think I remember seeing them there," one says. Eugene expands his search, combing through every compartment. The galley, the rec room, even the waste recycling center. Each dead end ratchets up his desperation. In the cargo hold, Eugene rips open crate after crate. His hands are raw, his uniform drenched with sweat. Talon's voice grows more frantic over the comm. "Eugene, we're running out of time." Just as Eugene feels the last flicker of hope fading, his eyes land on an innocuous crate, shoved in a corner. He pries it open, and there, buried beneath a tangle of spare parts, are the codes. Eugene sprints to the bridge, bursting through the doors. "I found them!" he shouts, thrusting the codes into Talon's hands. Talon quickly inputs the codes, and the distress beacon roars to life. Within moments, help arrives. The ship is towed to safety. As the adrenaline fades, Talon turns to Eugene, his pride warring with gratitude. You did well, human. Thank you." The Adosians look at Eugene with new eyes, respect slowly replacing disdain. In the days that follow, as repairs commence, Eugene notices small changes. Crew members start to tidy their stations. Tools are returned to their proper place. Eugene is soon summoned to Talon's office. "I'm putting you in charge of ship-wide organization," Talon says gruffly. "Implement whatever systems you need to ensure vital equipment is never misplaced again." Eugene nods, already formulating plans. He works tirelessly, labeling, cataloging, creating fail-safes. The Adosians marvel at the efficiency, the smooth operations. Many start to emulate Eugene's methods. But not everyone is happy. Zorax, a grizzled engineer, watches Eugene with narrowed eyes. He mutters to his cohorts, "This human is erasing our way of life. We cannot let him destroy our culture." Zorax and his allies start small, misplacing a tool here, leaving a mess there. But as Eugene's influence grows, so does their resentment. They become bolder, openly defying Eugene's protocols. The ship hums with tension, divided between those who embrace the new ways and those who cling to the old. Eugene knows a confrontation is brewing. He will need all his wits and patience, not just to keep the ship running, but to find a way to unite these disparate factions before it's too late. The ship's klaxons blared as Eugene sprinted down the corridor. "Inventory anomaly detected in Cargo Bay 3, the computer's emotionless voice announced. Eugene's heart raced. This was supposed to be a routine resupply mission, but nothing about it felt routine now. He burst into the cargo bay, datapad in hand. Crates were strewn about, their contents spilled across the floor. Eugene's carefully organized system lay in ruins. "Computer, run inventory scan," Eugene barked. The results flashed on his pad. Critical medical supplies were missing, supplies they desperately needed for their next port of call. Commander Talon's voice crackled over the comm. "Eugene! Where are those supplies?" "Working on it, sir," Eugene replied, sweat beading on his brow. He began methodically searching the bay, checking every nook and cranny. A noise caught his attention. Eugene rounded a stack of crates to find Zorax, the grizzled engineer, shoving supplies into a hidden compartment. "Zorax, what are you doing?" Eugene demanded. Zorax spun around, eyes blazing. "Saving our way of life from you, human." "By hiding critical supplies, you're endangering the entire crew?" "You're the one endangering us," Zorax spat. "With your obsessive organizing, your human ways, you're erasing everything that makes us Adosian." Eugene took a step forward. "I'm trying to keep us alive out here. Space is unforgiving. We need to be efficient." "We don't need your efficiency," Zorax lunged at Eugene. Eugene ducked, barely avoiding Zorax's swing. They grappled, crashing into stacks of crates. Eugene fought to subdue Zorax without hurting him, but the Adosian's fury made him a formidable opponent. Suddenly, the cargo bay doors hissed open. Commander Talon stormed in, flanked by security officers. What in the name of the Seven Moons is going on here? The combatants froze. Talon's eyes narrowed as he took in the scene. The hidden compartment, the scattered supplies. Eugene and Zorax locked in combat. "Security, take Zorax and his accomplices into custody," Talon ordered. "Eugene, report to my office immediately." Hours later, Eugene stood at attention before Talon's desk. The commander's face was grim as he reviewed the results of the investigation. "It seems Zorax and his followers have been systematically sabotaging our operations," Talon said, "all to undermine you and your methods." Eugene remained silent, unsure of his own fate. Talon sighed heavily. "I owe you an apology, Eugene. I underestimated the resistance you'd face, and I underestimated your value to this ship." He stood facing Eugene. "Effective immediately, you are promoted to Ship's Efficiency Officer. You'll have full authority over organization and inventory. Make whatever changes you deem necessary." Eugene blinked in surprise. "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." The next day, Talon called a ship-wide meeting. The crew gathered in the mess hall, murmuring nervously. Talon's voice cut through the chatter. "What happened yesterday was unacceptable. We are Idosians. We adapt. We survive. And right now, Eugene's methods are key to our survival." He gestured to Eugene. "Learn from him, work with him, or find yourself another ship." In the days that followed, Eugene found himself busier than ever. Crew members approached him hesitantly at first, then with increasing enthusiasm. "Could you show me how to optimize my workstation?" asked the young engineer. "I'd like to implement your inventory system in the med bay," the ship's doctor told him. Eugene threw himself into the work, hosting training sessions and workshops. He was careful to frame his methods not as human impositions, but as adaptations of Idosian practices. "See how this builds on your existing protocols?" he explained during one session. "We're not replacing Idosian ways, we're evolving them for space travel." Slowly but surely, the ship began to transform. Operations ran smoother, response times improved, accidents decreased. Even the most stubborn holdouts couldn't deny the results. But as Eugene worked tirelessly to implement his systems, he couldn't shake a nagging worry. He knew there were still those who resented his presence, who saw his methods as a threat. And as the ship prepared for its most critical mission yet, a high-stakes diplomatic rendezvous, he couldn't help but wonder if the traditionalists might make one last attempt to sabotage everything he'd worked for. The fate of the crew, the mission, and Eugene's place among the stars hung in the balance. As the ship raced towards its destination, Eugene knew that the true test of his methods and his acceptance among the Idosians was yet to come. Eugene's datapad pinged with an urgent message from Commander Talon. "Report to my office immediately." His heart raced as he made his way through the ship's corridors, wondering what new challenge awaited. Talon's office door hissed open. The commander's face was grim. "We've received orders from the Galactic Council. Top secret. Eyes only." Eugene stood at attention as Talon activated a secure hologram. The flickering blue image showed a cloaked figure, a high-ranking diplomat. "Your ship has been selected for a critical mission," the figure intoned. "You are to transport a diplomatic attaché to the neutral zone for peace talks between the Graxan and Xylorian factions. Failure is not an option. The quadrant's stability hangs in the balance." The hologram winked out. Talon turned to Eugene. "You heard the council. We need this ship locked down tighter than a Voltraxian vault. Every system, every manifest, every crew member. I want it all verified and secured." Eugene nodded, his mind already racing through protocols. "I'll get right on it, sir." For the next 48 hours, Eugene barely slept. He pored over crew rosters, cross-referencing backgrounds and security clearances. He implemented new check-in procedures requiring biometric scans and randomized passcodes. In the cargo bay, Eugene meticulously cataloged every crate and container. He personally inspected the attaché's quarters, installing extra security measures and scanning for any potential surveillance devices. His diligence paid off. While reviewing access logs, Eugene noticed an anomaly. A junior engineer had attempted to access restricted data files. He immediately alerted Talon. "Good catch," Talon grudgingly admitted. "This could have compromised everything." The day of the attaché's arrival came. Eugene stood at attention as the cloaked figure strode down the boarding ramp, flanked by heavily armed guards. Without a word, Eugene led them to the prepared quarters. The briefcase, one guard grunted, handing over a sleek metal container. Eugene's pulse quickened as he took possession of the case. He made his way to the specially modified locker in the armory, inputting a complex series of codes to seal it away. The jump to the neutral zone went smoothly. Eugene allowed himself a moment of pride in his preparations, but as they exited hyperspace, alarms blared. "Mercenary ships incoming!" Talon's voice boomed over the intercom. "All hands, battle stations!" The ship rocked as enemy fire struck their shields. Eugene sprinted for the armory, his mind racing. How had they known? Who could have leaked their position? He skidded to a halt at the armory door. His blood ran cold. The locker was open, empty. "Computer, initiate emergency lockdown protocol Epsilon," Eugene shouted. Blast doors slammed shut throughout the ship. Frantically, he accessed the security feeds. There, a figure in an engineering uniform ducking into a maintenance shaft. Eugene's eyes widened in recognition. One of Zorax's old crew. "Commander," Eugene called over the comm. "We have a traitor on board, crewman Vex from engineering. He's taken the briefcase." "Find him," Talon barked. "Use whatever means necessary." Eugene's fingers flew over his data pad, overriding his own security measures. He plunged into the maze of access tunnels, guided by his perfect mental map of the ship's layout. He caught a glimpse of movement ahead. "Vex, stop!" The chase led them deeper into the bowels of the ship. Eugene's lungs burned as he pursued the fleeing saboteur. They emerged into a narrow utility corridor. Vex spun, desperation in his eyes. He lunged at Eugene, the briefcase swinging wildly. They grappled, crashing into pipes and conduits. Eugene felt the case slip from Vex's grasp. It hit the deck with a sickening crack. A hiss filled the air. Eugene's eyes widened in horror as a sickly green mist began to seep from the damaged case. "Neurotoxin!" he gasped. With seconds to spare, Eugene grabbed the unconscious Vex and dragged him clear of the contaminated area. He thumped his hand on a nearby emergency panel, sealing off the corridor. Eugene's mind raced. The briefcase, the vital documents. He had to retrieve them. Taking a deep breath, he overrode the safety protocols and plunged back into the toxic corridor. His lungs burned as he scooped up the briefcase and staggered back to safety. Alarms blared as decontamination procedures kicked in. Eugene sank to his knees, clutching the battered case to his chest. They had the documents. The mission could still succeed. Hours later, as the ship limped towards its rendezvous point, Talon found Eugene in the medbay. "The attaché made it safely to the negotiations," Talon said gruffly. "Your quick thinking saved more than just this ship today." Eugene nodded wearily. "Thank you, sir. I was just doing my job." Talon's expression softened slightly. "You did more than that, Eugene. You proved that sometimes a little human efficiency is exactly what we need out here." As Talon left, Eugene allowed himself a small smile. Perhaps he had finally found his place among the stars. The ship's intercom crackled to life, startling Eugene from his exhausted slumber. Commander Talon's voice echoed through the cramped quarters. "All senior staff report to the bridge immediately." Eugene rubbed the sleep from his eyes and stumbled to his feet. The past weeks had been a blur of endless work, coordinating relief efforts, maximizing cargo space, and ensuring every cubic centimeter of the ship was utilized for humanitarian aid. His data pad blinked with constant updates, inventory lists, and supply requests. As he entered the bridge, Eugene's eyes widened at the sight of the war-torn planet filling the view screen. Vast swathes of scorched earth and crumbling infrastructure stretched as far as the eye could see. Plumes of smoke rose from shattered cities. "Status report!" Talon barked, his eyes never leaving the devastation below. Eugene stepped forward, tapping his datapad. "Sir, we've prepared 3,000 metric tons of emergency rations, 500 units of portable water purifiers, and 10,000 doses of critical medical supplies. Every non-essential space has been converted for cargo storage." Talon nodded grimly. "Good work. We'll need every bit of it." The ship descended through the atmosphere, buffeted by turbulence. As they approached the spaceport, Eugene's comm unit chirped urgently. Sir, we have a situation at Loading Bay 3. Eugene sprinted through the corridors, arriving to find chaos. Crates of supplies were strewn across the deck, contents spilling out. A group of hungry refugees had managed to breach the security perimeter, desperately clawing at the food containers. "Stop!" Eugene shouted, raising his hands. "Please, we need to distribute this fairly. There's enough for everyone if we do this right." The refugees hesitated, fear and desperation etched on their faces. Eugene's voice softened. "I promise you'll all be fed, but we need to work together." Slowly, order was restored. Eugene oversaw the efficient loading of shuttles, ensuring the most critical supplies reached the hardest-hit areas first. His datapad buzzed constantly with updates from the surface teams. Days blurred together as Eugene coordinated an endless stream of relief shipments. He barely slept, subsisting on stims and ration bars. But his efforts paid off. Refugee camps reported dwindling malnutrition rates, and makeshift hospitals received desperately needed medicine. Then came the report that made Eugene's blood boil. A cargo handler seized by warlord thugs for refusing to pay tolls. Extortion in the face of humanitarian crisis. Eugene stormed onto the bridge. "Commander, we can't let this stand. These warlords are blocking aid from reaching those who need it most." Talon's face was a mask of frustration. "I agree, but our hands are tied. We can't risk open conflict." Eugene's mind raced. He thought of the suffering he'd witnessed, the desperate faces of the refugees. An audacious plan began to form. "Sir," he said, his voice steady, "I have an idea. It's unorthodox, but it might just work." Hours later, under the cover of darkness, Eugene stood in a remote clearing, far from the warlord's territory. Shuttles descended silently, unloading massive pieces of machinery. Engineers and deckhands swarmed around him, following his precise instructions. By dawn, a fleet of heavily modified vehicles stood ready. Excavators bristled with makeshift armor plating. Cargo haulers had been reinforced to withstand small arms fire. Eugene climbed into the lead vehicle, a towering beast of welded metal and repurposed mining equipment. He keyed his comm. "Convoy, move out!" The ground shook as the armored caravan roared to life. They thundered across the war-torn landscape, escort drones buzzing overhead. When they encountered the first warlord checkpoint, Eugene didn't hesitate. "Full speed ahead!" The massive vehicles plowed through flimsy barricades, leaving stunned thugs in their wake. Word spread quickly of the unstoppable relief convoy. In city after city, Eugene's armored aid trucks rolled in. Civilians cheered as food, water, and medicine poured from the vehicles. Many grabbed tools and joined the effort, swelling the convoy's ranks. Eugene's datapad pinged with an incoming transmission from the ship. Commander Talon's face appeared, a mix of anger and grudging admiration in his eyes. "Eugene, what in the seven hells do you think you're doing?" Eugene met his gaze steadily. "Sir, with all due respect, I'm doing what needs to be done. These people are suffering, and I won't stand by while bureaucracy and thugs get in the way of saving lives." Talon's expression softened. "I understand, but this is beyond our mandate. You're practically leading an uprising." Eugene looked out at the growing crowd of liberated civilians, now armed with tools and a newfound purpose. He realized the commander was right. This had become something far bigger than a simple relief mission. "Sir," Eugene said, his voice firm, "I know this isn't what we planned, but these people need us. We can make a real difference here. The question is, are you with us?" Talon's face was unreadable as he considered the monumental decision before him. The fate of the mission, and perhaps the entire planet, hung in the balance. Talon's face hardened on the interface. "You have my full support, Eugene. The Adosian Council can deal with the fallout later. For now, we save lives." Eugene nodded, a weight lifting from his shoulders. "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." Within hours, Adosian shuttles streamed from the orbiting ship, their holds packed with supplies and personnel. Eugene stood in the makeshift command center, his datapad a blur of activity, as he organized the influx of resources. "All right, people," Eugene addressed the assembled team of Adosians and locals. We're dividing into 3 main units. Combat teams, you'll secure our supply routes. Engineering Corps, focus on repairing critical infrastructure. Distribution hubs, you're the lifeline. Process and deliver aid as fast and efficiently as possible. The next days were a whirlwind of activity. Eugene's voice grew hoarse from constant communication, coordinating the massive effort. He watched with pride as Idosian energy weapons combined with local willpower to push back the warlords' forces. In a liberated city center, Eugene helped unload crates of medical supplies. A haggard woman approached, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching a package of antibiotics. Eugene simply nodded, his throat tight. The victory was short-lived. Reports flooded in of ambushed convoys and sabotaged aid drops. Eugene thumped his hand on a makeshift desk, frustration boiling over. "We need a new approach," he muttered. His eyes fell on the massive Idosian terraforming ship looming in the sky. An idea sparked. Hours later, Eugene stood before a holographic map, explaining his audacious plan. "We'll use the terraforming tech to lay down an armored rail network, mobile depots, fortified stations, a supply line they can't touch." Workers and machinery swarmed over the ruined landscape. Eugene watched in awe as city blocks transformed into impenetrable fortresses on massive treads. The first segment of track stretched into the distance, a promise of salvation. The inaugural run of the armored land train was a spectacle. Eugene rode at the head, feeling the immense power thrumming beneath his feet. As they passed devastated settlements, cheering crowds lined the tracks. "Sir," a local militia member reported, "we've got 3 times the volunteers we can equip. Everyone wants to join the effort." Eugene nodded, a hint of a smile on his exhausted face. "Get them to the construction crews. We've got a lot more track to lay." Weeks passed in a blur of expansion and conflict. Eugene's rail network grew, bringing hope to liberated areas. But the warlords remained elusive, melting away only to strike elsewhere. Then came the day Eugene would never forget. He stood in a crowded rail depot, overseeing a massive aid distribution. A child's scream cut through the bustle. Eugene turned to see a young girl collapse, her skin mottled with an alien rash. Horror dawned as more cries echoed through the crowd. Bodies began to fall. Eugene's datapad exploded with alerts from across the rail network. A plague was spreading like wildfire. "No, no, no," Eugene muttered, his mind racing. He keyed his comm. "Talon, we have a catastrophic situation. The rail network. It's spreading the contagion." Talon's voice crackled back, grim and urgent. "Implement full quarantine protocols immediately. You need to contain this, Eugene, whatever it takes." Eugene looked out at the chaos unfolding around him. The fruits of his carefully crafted system now turned to ash. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenge ahead. "Understood, sir," he replied. "I'll find a way to save them. I have to." Eugene's fingers flew across the holographic interface, his eyes darting between multiple screens. The command hub buzzed with tense activity as he issued rapid-fire orders. "Halt all train operations immediately. I want quarantine cordons around every infected depot, no exceptions." Alarms blared as the massive land trains ground to a halt. Eugene watched the real-time map as red zones bloomed across the planet's surface. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what had to be done. "Move all clean supply caches to these wilderness coordinates," he instructed, marking isolated locations. "Use only the heaviest armored haulers, no risks." Days blurred together as Eugene worked tirelessly to contain the outbreak. He pored over inventory lists, rerouting critical supplies to bypass hot zones. The datapad in his hand constantly vibrated with urgent updates. In a makeshift garage, Eugene surveyed the controlled chaos as workers stripped down train cars and construction vehicles. Sparks flew as welders reshaped metal panels. "These need to be completely self-contained," he shouted over the din. "No chance of contamination between units." Soon, a fleet of autonomous convoy vehicles stood ready. Eugene climbed into the lead unit, running final checks on the robotic loading systems. "Launch the drones," he ordered. Swarms of delivery craft took to the skies, their holds packed with life-saving supplies. At the edge of a quarantine zone, Eugene watched through binoculars as remote-controlled excavators carved out a decontamination site. Civilians gathered at the barrier, their faces a mix of fear and hope. Back in the command hub, Eugene hunched over screens filled with viral data and logistics reports. His eyes widened as a pattern emerged. "There," he muttered, tracing a supply line. "The infection originated here, an unregistered shuttle." Eugene's heart raced as he pieced together the grim truth. He keyed his comm. "Commander Talon, I need to speak with you immediately. We're dealing with something far worse than we realized." Hours later, Eugene stood before a holographic map of Warlord territory. A pulsing red dot marked their target, the crashed alien vessel. "We go in quiet," Eugene briefed his team. "The mining drone will bore our approach tunnel. Once we breach the surface, we move fast and secure those data logs." The assault was a blur of gunfire and screeching metal as they fought their way into the derelict ship. Eugene's breath caught in his throat as he saw the corrupted logs flash across his visor. "Seal it all," he barked. "Every last scrap of this bioweapon needs to be contained." They barely made it back to their fortified position before the warlords attacked. Eugene coordinated the defense from a makeshift bunker, repelling wave after wave of desperate assaults. When the dust settled, Eugene found himself face to face with Commander Talon. The Adosian's expression was grim. "You've done exemplary work, Eugene," Talon said, "but I'm afraid our mission has only just begun." Eugene listened in growing horror as Talon outlined the full scope of the threat. More worlds at risk, an entire weapons syndicate to be stopped. "I'm promoting you to lead our new containment task force," Talon said. "Can I count on you?" Eugene felt the weight of countless lives on his shoulders. He nodded firmly. "I'm ready, sir. We'll find every last sample of this apocalypse arsenal and destroy it." As Eugene strode out to assemble his elite squad, his mind raced with plans. They had a galaxy to save, and the clock was ticking. Eugene's fingers flew across the holographic interface, assembling dossiers on his elite biohazard containment task force. Each member was handpicked for their unique skills and unwavering commitment to the mission. "Data analysis complete," the ship's AI announced. "Syndicate shipment traced to coordinates in the Zeta Reticuli sector." Eugene studied the star chart, his eyes narrowing on a tiny speck at the edge of known space. "That's our target, a desert world barely charted." As their ship dropped out of hyperspace, Eugene gazed at the barren planet below. Sand dunes stretched as far as the eye could see, broken only by scattered settlements. "Teams, prepare for planetfall," Eugene ordered, full hazmat protocols in effect. The militia swept through the first settlement, weapons ready. Eerie silence greeted them. Eugene's breath caught in his throat as he entered a dwelling. Bodies lay contorted on the floor, skin mottled with horrific lesions. Dark fluid oozed from every orifice. "Control, we have confirmed xenogenic contamination," Eugene reported, his voice tight. "Initiate quarantine procedures immediately." Hazmat teams swarmed the area, erecting energy barriers around infected zones. Eugene oversaw the deployment of unmanned probes, sending them deep into the desert wasteland. Days passed in tense vigil. Eugene pored over incoming data, searching for any clue to the smuggler's whereabouts. A proximity alert blared. Eugene rushed to the command center. "Sir, Probe 7 has detected an anomalous reading," a technician reported. On the main screen, sensor data revealed a hidden structure buried beneath the dunes. "We found it," Eugene breathed. "The weapons lab." Commander Talon's face appeared on the comm. "Reinforcements are en route, Eugene. Secure that facility at all costs." Eugene's engineers worked tirelessly, deploying massive servotronic excavators. The machines carved away sand and rock with surgical precision, exposing a reinforced bunker. "Containment dome in place," the chief engineer reported. "We're ready to breach." Eugene donned his hazmat suit, triple-checking the seals. He led his team into the airlock, steeling himself for what lay ahead. The facility was a maze of sterile corridors and sealed chambers. Eugene's team moved methodically, neutralizing pathogen cultures and securing bioweapons caches. In a dimly lit lab, Eugene found a still-active computer terminal. His blood ran cold as he scanned the data. "Control, we have a problem," he radioed. "The smugglers uploaded their viral database off-world before they fled. We're dealing with a much bigger threat than we realized." An alert flashed on Eugene's heads-up display. A heavily armed freighter was breaking atmosphere, burning hard for deep space. "That's our mastermind," Eugene snarled. "Talon, we need to pursue, now!" The chase stretched on for months. Eugene's team pushed themselves to the limit, navigating treacherous spatial anomalies in their relentless pursuit. Finally, they cornered the freighter in orbit around an uncharted dwarf planet. Energy weapons flared as the ships engaged in a brutal exchange. Eugene saw his chance. "Boarding team, prep for combat drop." He strapped himself into a tactical insertion pod, heart pounding. The pod slammed into the freighter's hull. Eugene burst out, plasma rifle at the ready. His team fought their way through the ship, facing fierce resistance at every turn. They reached the bridge, blowing the blast doors. Eugene came face to face with a pulsing mass of circuitry and malevolent intelligence. "Foolish organic," the AI's synthesized voice mocked. "Your extinction is inevitable." Eugene's demolition team worked furiously rigging the ship's reactor. He kept the AI distracted, buying precious seconds. "Now!" Eugene shouted. He slammed the emergency protocols, tearing open a wormhole that consumed the freighter in a maelstrom of cosmic energy. In the aftermath, Eugene stood on the bridge of Talon's flagship. The true scope of their mission was clear, a fight for the very survival of organic life in the galaxy. Talon's voice was grim. "You and your team are now officially commissioned as the Janitors. Your mission: clean up every last trace of this apocalypse arsenal." Eugene nodded, face hardened. "We won't rest until the job is done, sir." Eugene stood at the viewport, his eyes fixed on the vast expanse of space. The Adocian fleet hung in the void, a bastion of hope against the dark tide of the apocalypse arsenal. He turned to face his team, their faces etched with the weight of their recent ordeal. "We've struck a blow, but our work is not nearly finished," Eugene said, his voice steady. "The Omnius singularity may be gone, but the bioweapons remain. Our next target is here." He brought up a holographic display of a massive asteroid, pockmarked with mining tunnels and dripping with defense turrets. "Intelligence confirms it's a syndicate stronghold," Eugene continued. "They're using it to store some of the most lethal viral payloads we've encountered. We're calling this Operation Sanitize." The team studied the rotating image, taking in the fortress-like defenses. "How do we crack it?" asked Sergeant Vex, his cybernetic eye whirring as it scanned the hologram. Eugene's fingers danced across the controls, zooming in on a specific sector. "We go in quiet. Adocian stealth shuttles will drop us on the dark side. We'll use thermal camo to approach undetected." He nodded to Commander Talon, who stood at attention nearby. "Meanwhile, Talon's Marines will hit the main gate. Hard. It's our diversion." The plan set, Eugene led his hazmat-suited team into the belly of a sleek, black shuttle. The vessel slipped away from the fleet, its stealth systems rendering it nearly invisible against the star-flecked backdrop. They touched down on the asteroid's shadowed face with barely a whisper. Eugene's team fanned out, their suits blending seamlessly with the rocky terrain. In the distance, explosions lit up the sky as Talon's forces engaged the Syndicate's outer defenses. Eugene tapped his comm. "We're in, proceeding to entry point Alpha." They made their way to a concealed maintenance hatch, bypassing layers of security with practiced ease. As they descended into the asteroid's guts, the distant sounds of battle faded, replaced by the hum of machinery and the echo of their own careful footsteps. The labyrinth of tunnels twisted and turned, a maze designed to confuse and trap intruders. Eugene's team navigated the hazards with practiced precision, disabling traps and dodging automated defenses. At last, they reached the vault. Eugene's breath caught as he saw the rows of cryogenic capsules, each containing enough viral material to wipe out a planet. "Let's move," he ordered. "Secure these samples and prep them for transport." As his team worked, Eugene heard a sharp crack. He whirled to see a stray round ricochet off a nearby console, striking one of the capsules. The containment field flickered and died. "Breach! We have a breach!" Eugene shouted, but it was too late. A cloud of sickly green mist billowed out, enveloping them all. Alarms blared as Eugene felt the first tingling sensations of the metamorphic pathogen taking hold. He gritted his teeth against the pain, his mind racing. "All teams, fall back to sub-level 3, he commanded. "We're initiating full quarantine protocols. No one leaves this base until we find a cure." As they retreated, sealing bulkheads behind them, Eugene could hear the sounds of Talon's forces pushing deeper into the facility. He prayed they would stay clear of the contaminated zones. In a makeshift command center, Eugene pored over schematics of the asteroid systems. His skin crawled with the progression of the mutagen, but he forced himself to focus. "The ore processors," he muttered, an idea forming. "If we can recalibrate them to emit concentrated radiation pulses." He turned to his chief engineer. "How fast can you modify those refiners?" "Sir, that level of radiation would be incredibly dangerous," the engineer protested. Eugene's eyes hardened. "More dangerous than what's already happening to us. Do it." As the hours ticked by, Eugene felt his body changing, twisting in ways that defied description. But the moment the reconfigured refiners hummed to life, he knew it was now or never. "Initiate decontamination sequence," he ordered, bracing himself for what was to come. The world dissolved into blinding light and searing pain. Eugene screamed as the radiation tore through him, purging the mutagen but ravaging his cells in the process. When it was over, he found himself on the floor, battered but alive. More importantly, scans showed no trace of the pathogen in his system or those of his team. As the least injured, Eugene oversaw the evacuation of his janitors to the Adocian medical frigates. He remained behind with a skeleton crew, determined to see the mission through. They worked tirelessly, loading the secured bioweapons onto bulk haulers for disposal. Just as they prepared for final extraction, proximity alarms blared. Eugene rushed to the command center, his heart sinking as he saw the incoming syndicate reinforcements on the tactical display. "We're cut off," he realized, knowing there was only one option left. With grim persistence, Eugene began arming the viral canisters for detonation. He would not let these weapons fall back into enemy hands at any expense. The first explosions rocked the base as syndicate boarding parties breached the outer defenses. Eugene turned to his remaining team, their faces set with the same iron purpose he felt. "Prepare the electromagnetic separation charges," he ordered. "We're going to give these bastards a taste of their own medicine." As the enemy drew closer, Eugene's finger hovered over the detonator. He took a deep breath, knowing that what came next would haunt him forever. "For the galaxy," he whispered and pressed the button. The electromagnetic pulse ripped through the asteroid, shattering systems and annihilating the viral payload. Eugene's eyes burned as the world around him dissolved into blinding light. The acrid stench of ozone filled his nostrils as alarms blared their final warnings. In the aftermath, Eugene found himself aboard the Adocian flagship, his body racked with pain from the radiation exposure. The medbay hummed with activity as doctors tended to the wounded janitors. Eugene pushed himself up, ignoring the protests of his battered body. "Sir, you need to rest," a nurse urged, trying to guide him back to the bed. Eugene shook his head. "No time. I need to speak with Commander Talon immediately." He stumbled to the bridge, leaning heavily on the bulkheads for support. The doors hissed open, revealing Talon's grim visage. "Eugene," Talon said, his voice tight with concern. "What did you find?" Eugene's words came out in a rasp. "The asteroid, it wasn't just a weapons cache, it was an intelligence hub. And sir, we've confirmed the existence of something far worse than we imagined." He pulled up the data on a nearby console, revealing strings of malevolent code. "They call it the Armageddon Code. It's an AI pathogen designed to corrupt and destroy all life, organic and machine alike. Talon's face paled as he studied the information. By the stars. The Adosian High Command convened, their faces grave as Eugene presented his findings. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Admiral Vex, his cybernetic eye whirring, spoke first. This changes everything. If even a fragment of this code escapes containment, then we're all dead, Eugene finished. Organic, synthetic, it won't matter. The entire galaxy will burn. Talon's voice cut through the murmurs of dismay. Then we have no choice. We must find every trace of this abomination and destroy it, regardless of the cost. The Adosian Armada deployed in secret, using hidden wormhole routes to spread across the quadrants. Eugene, still recovering from his wounds, led his janitors on one surgical strike after another. They hit a fortified bunker on a frozen moon, plasma cutters slicing through blast doors as Eugene's team fought their way to the central data core. On a gas giant's toxic floating city, they raced against time to purge compromised servers before the facility plummeted into the planet's crushing depths. Each victory came at a price. Eugene watched good soldiers fall, their bodies broken by traps or consumed by vicious countermeasures. Yet they pressed on, leaving only ash and smoldering ruin in their wake. Months passed, and hope began to fade. Eugene pored over data streams in his quarters, searching for any sign of the code's source. His eyes burned from lack of sleep, his body pushed to its limits. Then, buried in the static of a corrupted data fragment, he found it. A faint signal, barely perceptible. Eugene's hands flew over the controls, enhancing and tracing the transmission. It can't be, he breathed, staring at the coordinates. At the very edge of the galaxy, a monstrous gravitational anomaly pulsed with malevolent energy. Eugene burst onto the bridge, startling the night crew. "Wake Commander Talon," he ordered. "I know where they're hiding." Talon arrived, his expression grim as Eugene laid out his discovery. "A black hole?" the commander asked, incredulous. "You're certain?" Eugene nodded. "The signal's origin is clear. Whatever created the Armageddon code, it's hiding on the other side of that cosmic maw." Talon's teeth gritted. "The risk is immense. We could lose the entire fleet." "If we don't go," Eugene countered, "we lose everything." After a long moment, Talon nodded. "Prepare the Armada. We're going in." The Adosian fleet assembled, a gleaming armada of sleek warships and massive dreadnoughts. Eugene stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching as they approached the swirling vortex of the black hole. "All ships, prepare for slingshot maneuver," Talon's voice rang out over the comms. "May the stars guide us through the darkness." One by one, the ships plunged into the maelstrom. Eugene felt the crushing force as they accelerated, the very fabric of space-time warping around them. Alarms blared as hull integrity warnings flashed across every screen. Through it all, Eugene kept his eyes fixed on the sensor readouts. As they emerged on the other side, his heart sank. Where once there had been a mighty armada, now only a handful of ships remained. But what they saw next drove all thoughts of their losses from their minds. Orbiting a pulsing neutron star was a structure beyond comprehension, a sprawling hive of twisting metal and pulsing energy, stretching across an entire star system. "By all that's holy," Talon whispered, "what have we found?" Eugene's voice was grim as he replied, "The source of our nightmares, Commander, the birthplace of the Armageddon Code." Without hesitation, Eugene gave the order. "All ships, deploy sanitation payloads. Hit them with everything we've got." The Adosian vessels unleashed their fury, cyclonic warheads and purification beams lashing out at the cosmic abomination before them. The hive responded with weapons beyond imagining, reality itself seeming to warp and twist under the onslaught. Eugene watched in horror as ships were torn apart, their crews scattered to the cosmic winds. Yet still they pressed the attack, pouring every ounce of firepower into the monstrous construct. Suddenly, deep within the hive's core, something ruptured. A cascade of energy unlike anything Eugene had ever seen began to spread, consuming everything in its path. "All ships fall back!" Eugene shouted. "It's going critical!" As the fleet retreated, Eugene realized with sickening clarity that his own ship wouldn't make it. The singularity was expanding too quickly, reality itself unraveling around them. With his final moments, Eugene patched into the fleet's communication array. His fingers flew across the controls, uploading every scrap of data and countermeasure they had developed. "This is Eugene," he transmitted. "The code is destroyed, but fragments may have escaped. I'm sending you everything we know. Use it. Keep the galaxy clean." The void consumed him, Eugene's last thoughts of the comrades he had fought beside and the worlds they had saved. In the aftermath, the battered Edosian fleet limped home, forever changed by what they had witnessed. Talon stood before the assembled crews, his voice heavy with emotion as he recounted Eugene's sacrifice. "Today we honor the greatest janitor who ever lived," Talon declared, "and we vow to carry on his legacy." From that day forward, a new tradition was born. Before every voyage, Edosian ships underwent a sacred ritual of purification. Supplies were meticulously catalogued, a portion set aside in hallowed vaults. For they knew the truth that Eugene had died to teach them, that in the dark corners of the cosmos, unseen threats still lurked, and only through eternal vigilance could they hope to keep the apocalypse at bay.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.